The new CEO of one of America's most recognized brands just locked out most of the company's 8,000 employees and fired nearly half of them. It would be a big story. I would have your attention, but now you can relax. It's just Elon Musk over at Twitter. Nobody likes to see people get fired, but Musk's got a big problem. Dozen-plus advertisers either canceled or pushed their ads on Twitter. And remember, that's the only way Twitter pays its bills. Twitter, of course, is a cesspool of the worst parts of humanity, intersected with American politics. But there are really two options here, just in the past week or so. Elon ruins Twitter, which is possible. Hard to do, but it's possible to ruin Twitter. Or Twitter ruins Elon. I know what you were thinking. Maybe we could get a twofer. Jason Nichols is here, professor at the University of Maryland. Am I being too optimistic to hope for that?
I think you're being too optimistic. I think in the long run, Twitter will be okay. But I think he is opening the door to a serious competitor for the first time. We've seen all these different social media apps, none of them really serious. But I think when you're losing advertisers, you're cutting your staff, particularly ones with specialized knowledge, and he's threatening to charge people in order to be amplified and not putting serious guardrails on that amplification and on verification. I think some people are going to be thirsty for another social media outlet. And there's probably going to be some capitalist who comes along and takes advantage of that and realizes they can get General Motors and General Mills and all that and be a little less.
If they get the users, and then obviously you're going to have the content issues sort of all over again. The advertisers allegedly leaving because they don't, they're sort of warning Elon. How much of this, because the content on Twitter hasn't really changed in the past 2 weeks. Elon hasn't done anything. It's not like President Trump is back or neo-Nazi sympathizers are back or anything like that. How much of sort of the fight against Elon Musk is that there is an elite part of America that is angry not only at him for Twitter, but that he's sort of becoming almost a country or a government onto himself, right? He has his own foreign policy, talking to Vladimir Putin. He's launching satellites around the world. He's got Tesla, where he's cozying up to Xi Jinping in China. In a way, Elon Musk is a government separate from the United States.
Well, I think that that is the fear for all of those ultra billionaires. And I think that is a reasonable fear that they are getting a little too big, a little too powerful. And now him holding the keys to one of the most powerful social media outlets, I think just makes him even that more dangerous. I would say
you say that Mark Zuckerberg effectively controls Facebook, which is, arguably as big, not as influential sort of in politics and in the sort of elite conversation of the American experiment, if you will, because that's where journalists and politicos all talk to each other on Twitter and think it's real life. But, Zuckerberg is far more loathsome in many ways than Elon Musk. Why doesn't he get the sort of anger and the focus that Musk does?
I think you haven't been listening, because a lot of people don't like Zuckerberg on the right or the left. I think he's been getting a whole lot of heat. It just seems like right now, because of Elon Musk's recent acquisition, that he's in the front of the news. But if you remember, of course, Elizabeth Warren was going after Zuckerberg. People on the right were going after Zuckerberg. I think Zuckerberg's definitely in the crosshairs because he is one of these ultra billionaires that I think is dangerous, and a lot of people want to go after them. And I will also say that I think there are people who would disagree with you that nothing has changed. We saw the whole thing about Paul Pelosi and some of the hashtags that were gaining steam. There are people on the right who were saying this would have never happened if it weren't for Elon taking over. And there were people on the left saying this would have never happened if Elon hadn't taken over.
Okay, so fair enough. Fair enough. It's not a world I spend an inordinate amount of time on, so I respect your idea.
Good.
Look, as we said, the best possibility is it could ruin Twitter and it could ruin Elon Musk. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.